So today I'm going to give you a walkthrough of NotebookLM. Now you'll notice that I'm using NotebookLM Plus. The only difference between this and the free version you can access immediately is how many times in a single day you can generate an audio overview of information you're trying to summarize. Plus is pretty much unlimited. The free version you get several in a day. Anyway, you may notice that I have a lot of tabs open here. And well, that is a little bit disorganized on my part. I'm leaving those up on purpose to illustrate the exact problem NotebookLM Plus addresses, which is helping you coordinate information that can seem overwhelming. Now, a lot of information that can seem overwhelming these days comes in the form of AI news. So many new developments in AI, and as an AI consultant, how do I keep track of all of those? Well, NotebookLM Plus can help. So we're going to create a new notebook. Now, once you click Create New Notebook, you immediately get a pop-up window to add sources. And this highlights that you can add a link to Google Docs, Google Slides, a website link, a YouTube link, or copy and paste some text. I found it's easier to close this out and have all three panels available and add sources in on the Sources panel here on the left. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add several different sources of news and information about AI that I recently stumbled over. I haven't had time to fully read them, but Notebook is going to help me organize them. So you click Add, and that Add Sources window comes back up. So I'm definitely interested in the new forthcoming model for DeepSeek, DeepSeek R2. So let's go here, and let's add a link. So we've got that. Now that's here in our list. And you'll notice immediately in the chat window, you get a little bit of a summary, and you have a chance to do a mind map. And if you do a mind map, although there's not a mind map button in the studio pane, in the studio panel here, the mind map will populate in the studio. Same with adding a note, same with adding audio overview, although you also have an audio overview generation button here in studio. Anyway, I've added just one source. I want to add more. And now something interesting, Jason Gulya, one of my connections on LinkedIn, he does a very cool podcast called The AI Adventure. And he recently met with, let me see, who is he talking to? Melanie Dosseau, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I am going to copy and paste this entire transcript because it's about the concept of AI resistance, of people who don't want to use AI in education, why they don't want to use AI in education. And as an educator turned AI consultant, I find that fascinating, and I think this conversation is pretty important. And I want help coordinating that in with other stuff that I'm investigating here. So we're going to, again, go to text. There we go. Now, this is a lot of fairly disparate stuff. So let's see what we can do with all this. Now we move to the chat window. So tell me what these sources have in common. How can I organize my thoughts around them and tell one cohesive story? So we've got an answer. The rapid evolution and impact of AI. AI is reshaping the job market. The nature of human AI interaction, potential risks, ethical considerations and challenges, transparency, limitations, and guidance. So those are the themes. Introduction, the dawn of a new AI era. So the chatbot is saying this is how we structure it, that we open with that. We say AI is reshaping the workplace. We talk about the complexities of human AI interaction. We dovetail into ethics and AI in specific sectors. I like this. This is pretty well organized. Now, it's important to remember that chat is not really connected closely to Studio. So when I generate an audio overview, it's not necessarily going to reflect this, but that's actually kind of nice because I'm learning all this information from two different angles and having a couple of different options. This written summary I just generated by talking in the chat window and the audio overview. So let me click to generate an audio overview, and this gives you this podcast-style conversation that sounds very engaging about the topic at hand. Okay, so let's generate this. That should take a minute or two. While we're doing that, let's explore some of the other features. We can do a mind map, and let's see what that mind map looks like. Nice. So we can branch out here and see all these different notes. It's a great way to visualize the information you're trying to coordinate. So we'll close that out. We still don't have that conversation yet. Let's make a study guide. Some good questions here. I like that, and it gives me a nice little quiz, as well as some essays if I really wanted to self-study and do an essay, or write a short answer to reflect on some of this stuff I'm learning. We have that. We have some key terms, which is pretty nice. And incidentally, this also surfaces that the studio feature in particular is good if you're trying to teach learners about something. Briefing doc, what's that going to look like? Evolving AI landscape in 2025. So this is similar to what the structure of what we saw in chat, except that it's much more comprehensive. I like that a lot. Okay, now an FAQ. What's that going to look like? Okay, how has the perception of the AI job market evolved? And basically what we have is these notes in many different formats. So highlighting of this information in many different formats, FAQ, mind map, etc., so that you have many different ways of referencing information. You can see the information in different formats and from different angles to help reinforce your learning, or the learning of students if you choose to do that. Timeline's a little bit interesting. There are dates on the article, so maybe we'll get a timeline here, but I found timeline is a little better when you're looking at a clear sequence of events and trying to learn about it, but let's see what timeline does. Okay, this does seem to be pretty good, where it's some sequential events and they have a cast of characters where they talk about it in this colorful way that enhances your ability to think about this and really learn about it. So we have this big list of people involved in this timeline, and it did a pretty good job of pulling out a sequence of events from my sources. So that's also great. At this point, we have DeepSeek. Prover and R2 Speculation is the name of the podcast. Let's listen to a little bit of that podcast.
You know, it's kind of wild to think that just a short while ago, the big question was always, what can AI do?
Right.
And now the whole landscape is shifting so incredibly fast, it can feel like trying to, I don't know, catch smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're here because you want to stay ahead
Right.
to really grasp what these changes mean without getting bogged down in all the technical stuff.
Uh-huh.
So that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We've gone through a ton of the latest stuff on AI, some surprising shifts in jobs, the quiet retirement of a pretty key AI model.
Fascinating progress in AI reasoning, too.
Right, and some really crucial points about how we interact with AI, especially as it gets more, human-like.
It really is amazing the speed of innovation that we're covering.
Okay, and these are the two voices that I'm getting by default whenever I generate a podcast. Now, if you look here, you can actually download an audio file of the podcast, which is pretty cool. You can go into interactive mode, and there you can't download an audio file. So right now I'm recording this on OBS. You might want to use Audacity or OBS if you want to make an audio recording of an alternate version of this podcast where you're interacting with the host. And let me show you what that looks and sounds like. Okay, play audio.
You know, it's kind of wild to think that a short while ago, the big question was always, what can AI do?
Yeah.
And now the whole landscape is shifting so incredibly fast, it can feel like trying to, I don't know, catch smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm
And
gonna
you're here
click
because you
join
want to stay
here.
ahead, right? To really
Oh, our listeners got something to share. Let's hear it.
As we go over these news stories, which one would you say is the very most important?
That's a great question. If I had to pick just one as most important,
It's tough. They all have big implications, don't they?
they do. But I'd lean towards the shift in the job market
Oh, interesting. Why that one?
because it touches so many of us directly.
Okay, so I paused it here. But as you can see, you can join, you can interact a bit, you can ask questions to them similar to the way you'd ask questions in chat and get extra clarity. Now, you can also add information that they'll respond to and incorporate into their podcast. So let me do that right now. I'm going to hit play, listen carefully, and listen for an opportunity to add some information.
The rapid growth in Gen AI related job posting?
Yeah, the 170% jump.
Exactly. And the shift towards needing people who can implement AI in
The
businesses?
management consulting boom.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, so I've been attending a number of virtual and in person events about AI in education. And what I've noticed is a real increase specifically in AI professionals and AI consultants on university campuses.
That's a really interesting observation.
It totally fits with what we've been seeing in the job market data.
Exactly. The Indeed Hiring Lab highlighted that surge in management consulting roles mentioning Gen AI,
And you're seeing that play out in the education sector, it sounds like.
which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool is they'll take it at face value, so don't be mischievous and feed them misinformation, but you can add a little bit of extra information into the podcast and essentially make it a podcast where you're not just a question asker, but you're also an expert. So those are the basic features there. We've explored those. The final thing I want to look at here is the share function. And the share function, right now you can only really share with other Gmail accounts. So let me see. And because I'm using this within my organization, sharing outside of my organization has been disabled by Elevate AI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this with my CEO. And he will get a private listing here and he can see the full notebook or chat only. And he can either be a viewer or I can set him as editor. I'm going to set him as viewer for now. I can change that share setting later because I really want to leave this intact for a number of screenshots I'm going to take for an upcoming lesson where I'm teaching a client how to use NotebookLM. So I'll click send and Chris is going to get a link he can access when he's logged into his Gmail. So that's the basic rundown on NotebookLM, all the basic features. I think this is pretty neat. If you're viewing this video within the context of the larger blog posts I'm writing about it, we're also going to discuss some of LLM's limitations. So you know which things, if you try them, won't quite work, and which things, if you try them, may require a little bit of a workaround or maybe a little bit unpredictable.